Hello and welcome to the Workforce Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Bray, Chief Strategy Officer at PracticeLink. This podcast focuses on the latest trends in healthcare recruitment while showcasing innovative strategies, success stories, and fresh perspectives affecting the healthcare workforce. These episodes will lead to in-depth, thoughtful discussions with recognized industry-leading healthcare professionals exploring the challenges of healthcare recruitment and beyond. Whether you're an experienced recruitment professional or just starting out, this podcast aims to help you discover how experts are reshaping the industry, leveraging technology, and fostering inclusive hiring practices. Today's episode, Transformational Leadership in Healthcare Recruitment, with insights from Carey Goryl. I'm pleased to introduce Carey, our guest today. Carey Goryl serves as the Chief Executive Officer for the Association for Advancing Physician and Provider Recruitment, affectionately called AAPPR. AAPPR serves as the leading voice in physician and provider recruitment continuum. In her role, Carey is responsible for providing the 2,400 members with the tools, research, and strategies they need to move physician and provider recruitment forward. With a passion for harnessing the power of people and insights, Carey is an expert on the impact of partnerships and how they can help remedy industry challenges. A forward-thinking association executive for the last 18 plus years, she is a certified association executive from the American Society of Association Executives with a master's degree in social work. An active mentor and dynamic speaker, she frequently speaks on physician and provider recruitment research and trends, association management, remote teams, and leadership topics. She lives with her husband and 2 teenage kids in Annapolis, Maryland. Welcome, Carey.
Hi, Christy.
Hi. It's so good to see you again.
It's good to see you, too. We've known each other a long time. I always enjoy our conversations.
Me too. Well, let's just jump right in. I'd like to give the listeners a little bit of insight about, kind of your personal leadership journey and growth. So with that, can you share a little bit about your journey starting in healthcare and association management to really becoming such a transformational leader in the industry?
To say that when I was my younger self in college, that I thought I might be president one day. Yeah, sometimes I thought those things. So I've always had this really big drive to make big change. If you didn't know this about me, I actually wanted to be a police officer. I really like social justice. I thought policing was the place to help people make change. Then I realized that wasn't for me. And so after I graduated with my master's in social work, I thought I really needed to be in Washington, D.C. And if you'll humor me for just a second, this story, if you can imagine one of those 1985 Crown Victorias from the old cop shows. They're like boats. Well, I had one. They were very safe. And I lived in Michigan at the time. And I was applying for jobs in DC, and nobody was calling me back. And I heard from a few people well, you have a Michigan address. Everybody wants to come to DC. You're a dime a dozen, Carey. You're going to have to try a little harder than just sending in a resume. My husband at the time was in sales. And he's like, I got this, Carey. We're driving to DC and we are going to walk into all these places. And so that's what we did. And I remember just, the drive is very hilly in this big boat of a car, you can just imagine. And I went to a bunch of nonprofit organizations in DC. I tried to walk in. Even back then, security was really tough. I didn't make it very far, but in Maryland, the executive director of the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault said, sure, Carey, sure. Yeah, you can come on over tomorrow, we'll talk. And I walked out the door the next day with a job. So I wasn't working in DC, but I was so close. Fast forward, a couple of years later, I landed at the International Association of Forensic Nursing. So this is where I got into healthcare. I was working with nurses, still working on that crime aspect, that healthcare, that intersection between the two. So it definitely fit a passion. I did that for 10 years. It was great that I was living in the DC area, sort of had that nice, beautiful, like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to deal with DC traffic. And then that led me to this organization back in 2016. And so I have been in leadership roles for most of my career. I love it. I wouldn't change anything about it.
Yeah, that's a good story. I think we obviously first met back then in 2016 as you were interviewing to join AAPPR back then.
Yeah. I think you were one of my first LinkedIn requests.
Yeah, you've been around and seen some really, really fun things. What would be some of those key experiences, and the story that you shared is definitely one of those, or challenges that have shaped that leadership style and philosophy? Maybe how did you draw from those experiences of, no, you're a dime a dozen, to where you are today?
My first reaction when I hear this question is I think of like my failures. I think of my rejections. Just because they're so powerfully impactful, like when you talk about shaping someone as a person, it's really those pain points that can sharpen edges very fast. Maybe it's a time when I didn't react quick enough. I remember when Facebook was new, and this kind of before people talked mean on Facebook. And I didn't actually understand the power of Facebook.
I think all you had was a like emoji. You didn't have like...
Right. Oh, the commenting.
It was positive. Yes.
Yes. And then when and so though I can think of plenty of instances where they shaped me as a leader, but if I think about it for just maybe 5 seconds longer, it's things like life coaching, job coaching, that honestly has shaped my career even more beautifully than any of those failure points. When I think of those failure points, those are a moment, there's a sharpness, there's a bite. I certainly want to avoid that sharpness in the future, and I will change behavior if it's needed. But when I think about who I am, who I've become, who I'm still trying to become, it's because of self-reflection. It's because of the coaches and honestly, like the mentors, even if it's just peers. I've had throughout my career different peer groups of other executives or people in leadership situations and positions. They have shaped me and who I am as a leader more so than any of my whoopsies have.
No, that's good. And I think the focus on what shaped you in a positive way is definitely better than all those digs and jabs that we take over our career journey. You are in a unique position as you have a board of directors that is transitional. It's changing every couple of years or so. So with that, you get new ideas, and maybe you thought you were on a path from a strategic direction, and things probably evolve a little bit for you, right, during that process.
They do. Things are always evolving, but I will say the end goal still looks fairly clear. Sometimes the strategies change, sometimes the priorities change. When I think about AAPPR, and there's a general desire and business need to grow for the benefit of the members, for the benefit of the industry. And what does growth look like? It's having more solutions. It's having richer thought leadership. It's helping people connect dots or connecting to each other. And so different boards may want to place a different emphasis on those things, but ultimately the end goal still remains the same.
Yeah, and I think, knowing, as you mentioned, AAPPR being very, very member-centric, right? And that's your focus of who you're serving. So as you've led through that growth in membership and then the engagement levels, I know from new website, new name, and entity name, all those things, how do you really ensure that mission stays aligned and is that focused endpoint for what you're doing in those strategies?
A big heart. I'll say that. When I think about leadership of a staff team, there's a lot of shared wisdom around investing in authentically caring, listening, having helpful feedback. I mean, all these sorts of things that if you want employee engagement, team engagement, leaders that lean into that see the humanity and the humanness of their team can have a lot of rich and great benefits. I also extend that to the 2,400 members of AAPPR. And I don't have the ability or the opportunity to talk to all 2,400 members. But when I do have the opportunity, I'm using those same skills. I'm using that same genuineness and authenticity to listen to what they're saying, take feedback if they have it, and just to honestly care about what's going on in their life. It's having a big heart.
So you joined AAPPR in 2016. How many other employees did the association have then?
That's a tricky question. The association didn't have any employees at that time. We had partners and we had vendors that helped supported the organization, but no, I was their only employee.
And how many employees do you have now?
Besides me, we have 6 other full-time employees and still a plethora of vendors and suppliers and partners.
That's awesome. I think the growth, and when you're in the non-for-profit world, like you are, it takes a lot to get to that and grow into those full-time paid staff positions.
Well, sure, because associations generally aren't making and building widgets. We're not providing a service that people purchase on this regular basis. What we provide is community, is education, professional growth, insights, research. Those are much softer things that you don't need those things every day. When you need them, you want to be able to access them. But on a general day-to-day basis, I don't need to know the statistic of X. And so I'm not always thinking about my membership association. And it just is different than a for-profit business that's trying to sell a product or a service. We're selling a community.
And I think within that, the culture and the networking capabilities that the association provides to the members, but a lot of what you've done is really foster those relationships across to the strategic partners and other folks in order to support the mission of all of those healthcare organizations. So either within AAPPR or other leadership positions you've had, what are some of the steps you've taken to foster that culture of innovation and inclusion to really push folks to the next level?
It happens on a number of levels, and I will say most of them are small scale. I don't know about you, but when I first leaned into wanting to encourage more innovation, sort of had to wrap my head around, I don't need to invent the next iteration of a computer. This doesn't need to be this massive life-changing invention or discovery in order for it to be an innovation. Many of the things we do are small improvements that over time evolve into the innovation that we were seeking. So encouraging small improvements, encouraging risk-taking. I'm not trying to risk anyone's career or the organization or a significant bottom line. Those might be called for in some cases, but I don't think to have a culture of innovation that's going to feel very secure. So getting the practice of taking risks, having a culture that celebrates that, and having a culture that celebrates when those risks fail, sort of like giving people that safety net of like, well, how much can I risk? How deep should I go? And learning from wherever that happens. So I think that's where it starts in like small steps, a small scale to have that culture of innovation.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say, what is the saying? Can't eat an elephant or...
You have to eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? Is that the phrase? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to work through with folks because sometimes the problems are so big. You have to break them down into those small segments. And like you said, those small successes build on each other exponentially.
And they give you the encouragement and the momentum to keep trying.
For sure. That's great support. I know that you provide to the team internally and then externally to the members that you serve. So let's talk a little bit about some of the trends you're seeing in the industry. We all know about the recruitment challenges, so staffing shortages, people shortages. So what are some of the biggest challenges you see facing the recruiters, sourcing teams, and those organizations that you support?
Did you mention physician provider shortage? I wasn't sure if you said that or not.
A little bit.
I know it's not so much. I don't know that it feels so much as a trend anymore rather than just a state of existence.
Yeah, I think it will surpass my lifetime. That's for sure.
That's right. So that being the elephant and sort of breaking that down into what are the things feeding into that larger issue, what I'm looking at, what AAPPR is looking at, is the components of that. So the trend of people not wanting to enter medicine, I think, is something we have to pay attention to. Physicians, they tend to be generational. There's a pride of being a physician that when this current generation is discouraging their children or nieces and nephews from going into medicine, that is what we have to pay attention to. Simultaneously, you go into medicine, you think it's going to be one thing, and you leave. When physicians and providers are leaving medicine left and right because they're not finding the balance, the joy, the money doesn't usually seem to fix those problems. I think temporarily they can make things tolerable. And it certainly doesn't happen for all physicians and providers. There are a lot of great providers who stay in it, and there are a lot of good cultures. And when you have a good organization where you feel like you really fit, like those are gems. But those trends in there make this physician shortage worse. So we have to do a couple of different things, right? We have to look at those issues, and some of these things AAPPR may be able to influence, maybe we won't. Maybe we just need to talk about it and just give it a voice, which is powerful enough. But looking at the pipeline of who wants to come into practice, how can we make that more attractive, the ability to stay in practice. You know, one of the things AAPPR did this year, which we're really proud of, is we hired a lobbyist. And we hired a lobbying firm, and we're actually, honestly, the press release has been written, but it is not out yet. So maybe by the time this podcast comes out, the press release will be public. Not that it's a big secret. We have been talking that this is our plan for the last 2 years in earnest. But, you know, we're real excited to lend our voice within a government affairs policy, or whether it's regulation, whether it's educating our members. Even in some cases, I look forward to the opportunity to partner with our members' organizations because they're also working on these same issues. And we certainly don't want to duplicate efforts. We want to add on and tag team and enrich those efforts. So we're super excited about addressing some of those issues in physician recruitment now through a government affairs approach.
That's great. I was doing some research recently, and a recent study by AMA actually had a positive spin on some of what self-reported burnout rates. So instead of going the wrong way, they're actually improving, where physicians are feeling less burnt out. And a piece of the report was either those physicians who were on edge, who had a really tough time during COVID, that they have left, or hopefully the organizations have recognized we have a significant retention issue and they have changed some of the culture, and that workplace wellness initiatives are being put into place to save those folks who were having and struggling some issues. So I thought that was a powerful thing. It's above 50%, which is great, because at this point, the age of the physicians and those people that are 55 and older, it's one third of who's practicing today. So they're just going to opt out versus I'm tired of it. You know, this is too much. It's too stressful. So trying to balance all of those things and still save lives. It's a big ask for hospitals and healthcare systems in this country.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we all want to have access to healthcare. And we all hope that the access doesn't take 6 months to get an appointment when we need it.
Right.
The provider is nice to us and listens.
Knowledgeable, all those things. So one of the things that I know a lot of folks come to PracticeLink for advice on or asking about is technology. Within PracticeLink, we talk about AI quite a bit. We talk about SEO. We talk about all these kind of fun technical components of being a job board. But how would you say technology is really transforming healthcare recruitment? And then what trends do you see coming really quickly, because everything is pretty rapid these days within the technology space?
When we talk about technology, I remember 20 years ago us talking about technology, and we were talking about email and websites. They were still sort of like, how is this going to change business? Don't you remember it before 2020, we had to have wet signatures? Almost like the phrase technology, I think we need to sunset that word. Not that it isn't there, but it is honestly so ubiquitous. Is there anything in our day-to-day life that isn't a technology? I mean, the invention of the wheel was technology. So I think in physician recruitment, what we're really getting at is, how is this profession staying ahead of it, on pace, with all of the resources, the tools, and how to use them responsibly and ethically? It's beyond utilization. It's how do I keep up? How do I have it not take advantage of me? And how do I make sure that it's not taking advantage of others, of candidates, or of my organization? Everyone talks about AI, right? AI is the biggest. And this generative AI that I was listening to a podcast, and they're like, come on, an ATM, right? Artificial intelligence. It had to be able to like scan your check and look at the numbers and do processes in order to deposit your money. Like, we are way beyond that now, where it can synthesize so much data and information and do it in the voice of another person, a fake person, that really has changed things. I think what happens is the lines really start to become blurred. And I think this doesn't just relate to physician recruitment, like this is everywhere, that the lines of what is my thought, what is your thought, what is our thought, and what is our thought translated by an algorithm. And those are the lines that are going to get blurred, that as a profession, we need to keep talking about our ethics, how to use it responsibly, being transparent, and being willing to have these conversations over and over again. Because like you said, that this tool, they're not call it technology anymore, like this tool, it's rapidly changing and being incorporated into every single other tool that we are using, almost to the point where it will become invisible. And we have to stay skeptical. That's maybe, if I had a word of caution, that because it can become invisible, just like a normal way of doing things, we can't become complacent. We have to be skeptical. We have to question our technology, our resources, and what they give us. Maybe even to the point of when we're getting data, maybe we actually need to go back in and dive into those numbers. We need to just have that healthy dose of skepticism as we move beyond where we are today with our resources.
What I've learned is the AI is learning from us all the time. And so the more you feed it and teach it, it does perform better. You know, by itself, it is algorithms. But when you're spending time on ChatGPT or Gemini or other forms, even your Alexa, as they're learning from you, then they can better predict for you. I think a keyword you mentioned is resources, where for me, especially for recruiters, and I was a recruiter for a long time, it's how can that technology, that tool, that resource help make your day-to-day easier? Something as easily as using Calendly or Bookings, that online calendar thing, game changer. Moving from, like you said, wet signature to e-signature on your employment contracts, game changer. All of those things that, what's the next thing that will just move us forward faster in that responsible way?
In that responsible way, yes, because the pace is going to be so fast.
So fast. When you go back, you said 2005, and I remember where I was working then at a hospital right outside of a intensive care unit was my little office. Probably used to be a bathroom because that's what they did for offices and hospitals back then. But we still had a fax machine. That was 20 years ago, still had fax. Faxes were still coming through.
I had to send a fax a month ago and I was so mad.
Did you have to go to FedEx or like Kinko? Like, what'd you have to do?
I had to rely on my mother-in-law who works in this ancient old little office building where they still have a fax machine.
That's awesome. Do they have a typewriter? Still have a typewriter, maybe?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, they probably definitely had some physical big calculators.
Right. Oh, that's good. It's just changing so fast. And I think a key definitely for AAPPR members is leaning into the networking and the resource provided by the association to help you because it's just so vast.
There's so many shortcuts. And again, I go back to, you don't know you're looking sometimes for an answer until it's right there on your lap. So like maybe I wasn't having a scheduling issue, but then today I am. So now today I need the solution and now I'm looking everywhere for it.
Right. Absolutely.
Did you know PracticeLink is not only home of the most widely used online physician job board, but we also have our own magazine? PracticeLink magazine has not only won several awards, including 2 ASPE Awards of Excellence in 2023, but it's also completely free. Over 375,000 physicians and residents receive copies of PracticeLink magazine each year, and you can too by visiting practicelink.com/magazine. That's practicelink.com/magazine. Thank you for listening. Now we'll return to the podcast.
So I know the association has done a lot of work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, including the certification resource that you provide annually at the conference. So, given the industry-wide calls for that growth in the DEI work, how can healthcare organizations really make that sustainable in their progress during the recruitment cycle?
I think we are now at a crossroads in 2025 where I don't think I'd be speaking out of turn to say that there has been a shift in the way some view diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility programs. I still think there's a lot of misunderstanding about the purpose and intent of the programs. And I'm concerned that there are fears of retribution or retaliation or even with funding, that many healthcare organizations rely on, that there is going to be this, I'm not going to call it a knee-jerk reaction, a very self-protective reaction in the DEI space in organizations to downplay. You've already sort of like seen the secondary conversation happening in the American society to make sure that these principles don't get hidden in other things. You're not allowed to talk about this, and now we're even going to be on the lookout because we know you're going to try and hide it. So the next step, if we're going to make this sustainable and make this a larger value, is that it needs to continue to be incorporated, that we're still working on unconscious bias, that we're still educating each other, ourselves, that we are looking at the experience of our patients and still honoring their experience is real and our employees' experiences are real. And there is a lot of still bias and misunderstanding about other people who look different, act different, sound different, that we still have to get beyond. So I'll say AAPPR is very much still committed to all of our values and to our diversity recruitment certification. And in fact, we're just going to make sure that it really becomes just a part of the fabric and that isn't something that is opt in or opt out, because it just needs to be a part of when you're evaluating people, that's just part of it.
Sure. And I think inclusion is one of the values, right?
It is. Yeah, that's the I in recruit is inclusion.
Very important. And I think for most of us that have been in recruitment long enough, as you look to grow your pipeline and have more candidates that meet the needs of the communities you serve, that either look like those folks or maybe they speak the same language, different from English, but it becomes harder and harder if some of these programs or these resources are taken away to encourage folks, like we said at the beginning, to go into medicine when it hasn't ever been a career opportunity that they've thought about because they didn't know any doctors growing up. So I think that it is important that as recruiters, you keep that front of mind that the communities you serve deserve that kind of diversity in what you're bringing in for them. Let's move on. We're going to talk a little bit about leadership philosophy, getting into some of what you do in your path or daily. But, in terms of motivating teams, how do you inspire and motivate your teams, especially during challenging times? And I would add, your team is all work from home.
They are. 100%. All of us are. Yeah.
So that's an extra layer to that question.
I have been a remote leader for the last 15 or so years of 100% remote teams. And if you know me, you know I have a big, strong feeling about the ability to do this. Now, I will give the caveat. I have worked with small teams. But remember when I said the 2,400 members, I extend myself to them. They are part of the team. And I don't see them on a day-to-day basis either. And I don't think that gets in the way. Sure, in-person encounters do have a different richness. They have a different opportunity to conversation. But do I think that is ever holding the organization back or holding a relationship back? No, I do not, because my values and how I show up for people is the same on the screen as it would be if I was in your office right now.
We agree on this. As somebody who has worked, I like to say work from anywhere, because I have done successful business calls from my car, from a coffee shop. So for me, because we are so accessible these days, thanks to all of our technology and our tools, those four walls of an office, I think more business gets done outside of a setting like that than in it.
Yeah, I like to say work where it matters. And if it doesn't matter, then okay, then work wherever. If you're a doctor seeing patients, and even then, that can sometimes be done remotely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you talked about widgets earlier. I always say, I'm not making buttons. Not making buttons. I'm not in Detroit making cars on a factory line. The jobs and the workplace setting and the work that needs to be done has evolved considerably.
It has, but our laws and our thinking has not caught up with it.
Agreed. Very much so.
Yeah. And the other part of your question, I want to get to that too. So you were talking about how do I inspire and motivate teams? It's in the opportunities I didn't miss. What I mean is an inspired and motivated team is one that trusts me, it trusts each other, and the trust is built on a day-to-day basis through what we do more than what we say. And so when there's an opportunity to have someone's back in a tough situation, if there is an opportunity to give meaningful feedback instead of fluffy feedback, but I will always give fluffy feedback even if I can't always make it so pithy. I'm always working on that. If I can celebrate somebody or celebrate the team, and if I can encourage just that to be the culture where anyone can have anyone's back, and that's just normal, and that is something that you should feel like you can rely on. It wasn't just an exception that someone came to your aid. That's just the norm around here. And when that happens, inspiration and motivation is just the byproduct of that.
That's great. A lot of what you talked about really led into the collaborative nature of your team.
Yeah, they have to want it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can leaders leverage that partnership collaboration mentality to amplify their organization's impact?
When it comes to partnerships and collaboration, which may or may not be the same thing, although they are often tied together, not every partner is the right fit every time. And so whether it's on your team, not every person is the right fit for your team at that time, and that things change. And so in order for there to be partnership and collaboration, that has to be front of mind. The old adage, do you have the right people on the bus, is very, very, very true. It's humility Collaboration does require a bit of humility and a lot of curiosity. The benefits of collaboration, it's insight, it's learning at maybe a different or diverse perspective, it's finding solutions that one segment can't see the whole picture, but another segment can add to it, and that from that you see a more 360-degree view. Then maybe you can never have a full 360-degree view. You're always looking for the other perspectives that are out there. And so having a rich curiosity to keep asking questions, as opposed to just being satisfied enough with the first solution that seems to work well enough. I'm a big fan of good enough in a lot of cases is good enough, right? That's like, if you're a perfectionist, this is the good mantra to adopt. And in collaboration, you can keep asking questions to get some richness to it.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of business scenarios, it's really moving from that transactional interaction to that relationship, which becomes more of a collaborative partnership.
Yeah, it's all about the people. I mean, we've been talking about this in the context of leaders, and it's not about, the leader of one group and the leader of another group deciding that we're going to have a partnership and the collaboration. Where that happens is in the teams of both of those organizations, talking and being curious and trusting each other, building that trust.
Yeah, and I think the alignment on the mission, what you're trying to get out of that.
Yeah, the purpose, right? Alignment.
Define for us, what does visionary leadership mean to you, and how do you apply that in your day-to-day work? Maybe think back, 2016 when you came in to AAPPR, the growth, financially, membership-wise, where the organization is today. Did you have a vision back then?
I let the vision for AAPPR, now AAPPR, evolve. Coming in brand new, I needed to be very curious. I needed to ask a lot of questions and understand the history so that the parts that should be repeated, I needed to protect, and the parts that didn't need to be repeated, I could find a way to help the organization let those pieces go. And it probably wasn't until about, I hope I'm not too slow, but 3 years before I really had a vision of really just where the physician recruitment profession could be. Not just AAPPR. I mean, AAPPR is a tool for the profession to have the influence and the credibility to do its job well, and to have the people who are doing that work feel good about what they're doing. And so being a visionary leader, I'm trying to find the future that feels good, that feels right, that feels balanced, that feels reasonable. And so maybe the vision is only a few years out. It doesn't have to be 40 years out. Sometimes it's just vision for the end of the year, because that's something a little bit more tangible and can be evaluated of how close did we get to that. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to inspire growth and movement that improves people's lives.
I think that's good. I think sometimes vision seems like a big, large scale word that is 20 years, 50 years into the future. And you're right, if you segment out, and I think one of the things we've been focusing on internally is you get 1% better, 1%, 2%, 3%, 5% better. 5% is meaningful in many, many, many business scenarios. So segmenting it down, so then you do have those small successes to celebrate along the way.
And then if we did that, what else can we do? It's just so empowering. And we haven't even mentioned the word empowerment yet. But so much about teams and leadership is about empowering people to believe that they can. And when they're empowered, they believe that they can.
Yeah, and I think you can give people a lot of tools and resources and technology and any other buzzword, but if they're not empowered either intrinsically from the inside or culturally within the organization, it doesn't matter how much you've spent on all of those things. So I know that as a CEO, very, very busy schedule. And as we said at the beginning, you have a husband and you have 2 children. So how do you work on or maintain the balance of your work and your life while managing the demands of being a high impact leader?
I pick things up and they fall, and I pick things up and they fall. And then I pick them up again. I can't say that I'm juggling. Because that would mean that everything was staying in the air.
Right.
But you know what? There's a real beauty in the gift of when things fall on the ground. I don't always have to pick them back up, or I don't have to pick them up right away. And if something's been on the ground a little bit too long and maybe it looks neglected, I need to pick that one up. And maybe I even need to give it even more time and attention. And so, the balance is, it's a wave, and much of work is very cyclical and it's a wave. So trying to ride the ebbs and the flows and trying to pay attention so that I'm not in a state of constant hurricane versus drought. It's self-reflection. It's a good peer network. It's taking care of myself and letting go when something that I've been doing to take care of myself is no longer bringing me joy. So it's understanding what brings me joy, what makes me happy, what is fun, what is fulfilling, and trying to do more of those. And I include my job as being one of those things that needs to bring me joy. It needs to be fulfilling. Not every day and not everything about it needs to do those things, but overall, the job needs to fulfill those buckets too. And when the job is just another part of family, home, spirituality, aspirations, it's all just part of there. And that's when I feel like I've got at least enough balance that might be had by a human.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think when you, might sound cliche, but when you love the work you're doing and you can see the outcomes are real, saving lives, putting physicians and providers in communities, and their goal is to save lives. When you can see that every day, I've said it before on other recordings, but what makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning when you're tired, but you're excited because you have the ability to impact that. Is really a cool thing.
Yeah, and it can be on a multitude of scales. It's not always about saving someone's life. It could just be, I made a difference. I put a smile on someone's face. I hit the bottom line margin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We both have traveled with our families to quote unquote work events and work things. And it's fun. I like for my kids to see me enjoying what I do. They definitely hear about my bad days, but I do like them to hear about my good days. And they've shared with their friends, this is the PracticeLink TikTok channel. I'm like, start following it. Make all your friends follow it. And they'll brag about, you're recording a podcast? How do you do that? That's the coolest thing. So I think showing them the value of work, but also the joy in what you do, the hours of the day when they are not around, is really important. So we've talked, a lot about leaders and maybe some networking, but for the group that's what I would say is an emerging leaders. So folks who are either inspiring, maybe they're in a manager role, they're looking to move to director or director to a VP level and on up the organizational structure. But what advice would you give to aspiring leaders looking to impact healthcare or association management, since that's kind of your other thing?
Well, if you're aspiring to be a leader, one, you probably already are. So give yourself some credit for where you're at today, because the path is long and you never exit. In terms of, you'll always be aspiring for that next piece, that next component, that next layer. You're a complicated human being. You have a lot of blind spots. And if you're young in your career or old in your career, depending, you may have a lot of blind spots that you are still not aware of. Go try to find out your blind spots. Not because you are wrong or bad or broken or you're not cut out for this, but because self-reflection and self-awareness is essential in a leadership role. You have to have the knowledge of yourself in order to have the credibility that you need to earn with the people around you. And if you don't know what's going on here, it's going to be really hard to have that credibility given to you by other people. So just know it's a journey. It's a forever journey. Keep reading, get coached, have a good peer network, and go find them. Go find it. Don't find one mentor, find many mentors and get them together in a room together. Create a little cohort, create a little mentoring group, and help each other grow as leaders. Have good boundaries. Nobody likes a martyr. You're not the only one who knows how to do the job and can do the job. So resist martyrism, have good boundaries, and find all the places where you can to have some fun.
That's great advice. Well, Carey, I appreciate our time together. As we wrap up, any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I'll just say that if anyone enjoyed this podcast, this conversation between us, I have a pretty active LinkedIn profile. It's just LinkedIn/Carey Goryl. I like to share a lot of articles that other people are writing about physician recruitment. I like to add my own comment to it. Sometimes I'll plug in AAPPR's research that maybe didn't get cited in the article, but I can add to it. Sometimes I add my own reflections and musings about leadership and team building and whatnot. So if you liked this conversation, you'd probably like following me on LinkedIn. And I don't get any other benefit other than I enjoy when people say, thanks for that post. That was really helpful. And that's all I'm looking for, if it's helpful. I like doing that. I do like doing that.
Yeah, the same. No, appreciate that. I appreciate all you do for the industry, specifically to physician and provider recruitment, what the association has done with you at the helm, pushing and continuing to push us forward and provide the education we all need. So thank you.
Thanks, Christy.
On behalf of PracticeLink and me, I thank Carey for appearing on the Workforce Wisdom podcast. For our listeners, please feel free to reach out with any thoughts, insights, or questions about anything we covered today. Please visit our website at practicelink.com or email plmedia@practicelink.com. Additionally, check out AAPPR.org for recruitment resources and networking. My name is Christy Bray. Thank you for listening to Workforce Wisdom.